Hello, this is Jay Mitchell, and we are back with another episode of the Libertarian Uncensored podcast, going over all the posts on the Libertarian Uncensored subreddit. Let's get right into it. So first we have House Republicans refuse to debate, sit there silently for 3 minutes, from YouTube.com, posted by Swan Pinky Dan, and that's a cross post from the new London County CT subreddit, and it looks like a YouTube video from Rep. Joe Naguz, and that's entitled House Republicans refuse to debate, sit silently for 3 minutes. And yeah, I think it's interesting how this guy who posted this, he's had me blocked for months, he's framing it like, oh, the Republicans aren't open to debate, but I'm open to debate, but he isn't. It just goes to show you how people, when the out-group does censorship, or refuses to debate, it's the worst thing ever. But when the in-group does it, it's almost always entirely justified. And that just goes to show you how, a lot of people say, oh, the out-group isn't willing to debate, but I am. But then they block anyone or ignore anyone who dissents from at all. And that just goes to show you how, people don't have values, they have teams. I'm sure if the Democrats were just sitting there silently, the House Democrats were just sitting there silently and refusing to debate, they wouldn't be posting this. They'd be saying they only post it when it confirms their narratives that the out group is bad and the in group is good. And yeah, it just goes to show you how, everyone says they're open to debate, but, that's why I think a lot of people really like social media these days. On social media, you can say you're open to debate and then block or ignore anyone who goes against you. And that just goes to show you, people say they're open to debate, but they're not really open to debate. They have their minds made up, and they'll just gaslight you into thinking that, oh, I'm open to debate. No, you're not. Stop being a liar about it. I'm not falling for your tricks anymore. Then we have Freedom for Me, but not for thee, posted by Spare Simeon, and that's the crosspost from the North Carolina subreddit entitled Hypocrisy, and that's a meme of an NC legislator and Drake holding his hand to medical marijuana, saying no medical marijuana, I guess, and then horse dewormer and raw milk, and he's pointing to that, yeah, I personally think the libertarian position is we shouldn't have any banned substances. If you want to do medical marijuana or any marijuana, you should be able to. If you want to do horse dewormer, you should be able to do horse dewormer. If you want to drink raw milk, you should be able to drink raw milk. Do whatever you want with any substance, That's the libertarian position. It's your body, your choice. If you want to put something in there that, I personally wouldn't, you have every right to do so. And that's my thoughts on that issue. Then next we have the Trump administration is looking into suspending habeas corpus from Twitter.com, posted by LegioX, and that's a tweet from C-SPAN, who tweeted, Stephen Miller says the White House is looking into suspending habeas corpus, which protects people from unlawful detentions. A lot of it depends on whether the courts do the right thing or not. And yeah, I personally think this is just kind of Stephen Miller jerking himself off, but the government has shown it can, get away with suspending habeas corpus like it did during the Civil War, but a lot of people will justify that because they say, oh, that's good authoritarianism. When they suspended habeas corpus back then, this would be bad authoritarianism. And yeah, I personally don't think it's that realistic that habeas corpus will get suspended, but you don't know. The state ultimately can justify whatever it wants to, since it has the legal monopoly on the use of force. So, everything it pretty much says is pretty much a privilege, not a right, and they can take that privilege away at any second if they feel like it. And that's why, you got it. People say, oh, our rights come from the government. No, they don't. Our rights come from innate. They come from within. The expansion of liberty comes against the government, not because of it. I think that was kind of a quote from Woodrow Wilson, who, kind of went on to do the opposite, but I do think it's a very libertarian quote. People think our rights come from the state. They don't come from the state. They come from within. If we didn't have any agency, we would have no rights at all. And that's why we should be thankful that God gave us agency. And yeah, that's my thoughts on that issue. So yeah, I don't know how realistic this is. Of course, on Reddit you see fear-mongering headlines like this every single day, and eventually it's going to kind of get tired of them after a decade plus, especially, since the past decade, it's all been pretty much the same thing. Orange man bad, he's going to become literally Hitler any day now. But yeah, so I personally don't think it's that realistic, but I do think it's concerning rhetoric. But yeah, if the Democrats are saying it, oh, we gotta suspend habeas corpus to protect transgender people, Reddit would either be downplaying it or saying, yeah, that would be good authoritarianism. And that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have Newark mayor released following arrest while protesting at ICE facility from New Jersey News12.com, posted by Ninja Lover. And yeah, I think it's interesting how when Ashley Babbitt and the January 6th people stormed into the Capitol, they said, oh, you can't storm into a federal government building. That's against the rules, and the government has every right to use deadly force against you. But when the mayor of Newark, New Jersey does it, it's completely fine. And that just goes to show you, people don't have values, only teams. And yeah, I'm pretty sure if he was forcing his way into Planned Parenthood with an R next to his name, the people who are saying he's being oppressed would suddenly not be willing to give him the benefit of the doubt at all. And that just goes to show you, they only care since he's a member of the in group rather than the out group, And it just goes to show you, people don't care about the facts, they care about what the narrative is. Recently the subreddit said, oh, Ashley Babbitt shouldn't be getting $30 million for storming the Capitol and getting killed there. But, now they're saying, oh, this guy had every right to storm into the ICE facility if he wanted to, because, he has a D next to his name, and ICE is bad. And yeah, it just goes to show you, people will just follow whatever the narrative is. They don't have, everyone says, oh, I'm a free-thinking individual, but then the narrative comes knocking at the door, and suddenly, that free-thinking individual disappears. Then we have an important message about taxes from Spare Simi, and that's a YouTube video from Carolyn Constar, stripping magician, and they add the kind of freedom that parents find threatening. And yeah, I don't really know what they're getting into that with this video too much, but yeah, I definitely agree that the taxation is kind of a form of magic, and if in every other circumstance, whenever you're forced to do something you don't want to do, people will say that's theft, that's not good. But when the government taxes people, even if they don't want to be taxed, they think, well, that's okay, it just goes to show you how, I'm personally for taxation as long as it's consensual, but, our society makes quite a big deal about consent these days, but when taxation is done unconsensually, Reddit and the MSM and all the normies will justify it and say, well, you gotta pay your taxes, even if you don't consent to them. And yeah, how would you feel if a man came up to a woman and said, I want to have sex with you if you don't consent to it, we realize that's wrong, but when the state does it, it's completely justified, and that just goes to show you how, they say, oh, I'm anti-Trump, I'm anti-government, he's not following the Constitution, but they'll still pay tax dollars to him and his government, even if they, say, he's literally Hitler, and but they'll still throw money at him, even if it's unconsensual, because they've been hammered into that taxes are good, even if they fund someone who they think is literally Hitler. And that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have Trump administration threatens to arrest House Democrats over ICE facility incident from Axios.com, posted by Ninja Lover. And yeah, I personally don't really care for that, as I said earlier, but I'm sure if it was Joe Biden threatening to arrest House Republicans over being mean to transgender people, Reddit would either be downplaying it or saying, hell yeah, Joe, tell them what for. And that just goes to show you, they said, it's like Reddit says, the government can't just be arresting politicians, but, they were completely fine with Trump getting indicted and charged, but when a member of their team gets indicted or charged for something they don't think is a crime, it's suddenly the worst thing ever. And that just goes to show you these people don't have any values other than my team is good, your team is bad. Then we have First They Came for the Immigrants from Grass Taste Bada And that's a meme they posted. Dudes be like, "Thank God the government is doing something about trans people and immigrants. My brother in Christ, you are the next target." And yeah, I kind of agree with that. But at the same time, if Kamala won the election and she was going after Christians and anyone who dissents from the official narrative at all, Reddit wouldn't be saying this. They'd be saying they deserve it, and that just goes to show you how they did. The government can go after whoever it feels like, and ultimately it can go after any group it feels like, whether they be immigrants, trans people, Christians, anti-abortion activists. But yeah, Reddit only seems to care when they go after the in-group rather than the out-group. I'm sure if there was a new Democratic administration and they went after anyone who voted for Trump and then anyone who ever questioned the official narrative at all, Reddit would be all over it saying, "You go, Queen." As a Kamala, and yeah, that just goes to show you how they don't have values. If it were up to Reddit, it'd be illegal dissent from the official narrative at all, and that's why I don't really care for Reddit. It's all just the official narrative you can get on MSNBC or CNN pretty much, and yeah, that's why I think you don't need those channels anymore. You have Reddit. I think it's interesting. In a lot of social media, it's people questioning the official narrative, which is why Donald Trump is so popular, because the official narrative is Donald Trump is the worst thing ever. But on Reddit, it's kind of the exact opposite. It's Donald Trump is literally Hitler, and anyone who dissents from the official narrative at all is going to be censored and banned. And that just goes to show you how I guess, I personally think, maybe some of it is organic, but I definitely think, a lot of it is how Reddit is completely astroturfed by the DNC into pretty much a DNC propagandist paper. It might as well be like, the Nazis had Der Stürmer, I think it was, or I forgot what they had. The Nazi paper. I forgot what it was. I think it was Der Stürmer. Yeah, it was Der Stürmer. And now I would say the modern Democrats have their equivalent in Reddit. And that's my thoughts on that issue. And I think we're going to wrap it up there. I'll see you guys in the next episode. Bye.